All right, how's it going out there, folks? Welcome back here to a Friday night, about 8:30 p.m. That's California time here. I'm back at the home base in California. You know that saying there's no place like home. I don't know. It's something about being planted here at home that's so relaxing. Anyway, spent the last week here in Texas doing a little severe weather chasing out there, but now we're back here in Northern California and covering all this earthquake activity. Goodness, talk about a massive amount of earthquake activity following today's larger earthquakes there south of Argentina. Got about 31 earthquakes, including this newer one here in the last hour. Now, that's a massive amount of earthquake activity for a 7.4. Now, got to watch these magnitudes here because occasionally these could point to a sign that they may all be foreshocks. If we start seeing some further 6s, maybe a low-grade 7 again, that could be telling us that there's obviously, maybe something bigger brewing in the area. But I do feel that following this movement today, right, if you look at some of this newer activity up the coast there near Peru, this earthquake, well, actually off the coast there of Chile, 4.9, very shallow earthquake there north of Santiago, Chile. Now that earthquake came in, let's see when that came in here. Looks like just prior, well, no, right in the mix, right in the middle of everything, right? Following that large event, we had this earthquake up here. A newer event down here within the last hour. It appears as though this strain is working its way northward off this fracture boundary, which would make sense. So that means we got to watch the Peru-Chile Trench up here along this area right here. It can produce some big earthquakes. In fact, the largest earthquake ever recorded, a 9.5 earthquake, struck back in I believe it was 1960, right? The Great Chilean Earthquake. That was a big one. But seeing this newer activity right now, following these larger events here, just confirms my suspicion that we're working northward here, potentially with some further strain. That is, if we don't see something larger here in the area off the coast of Argentina. Now, the largest magnitude so far today in this cluster, let me show you guys, 7.4. This earthquake originally came in as a 6.6 from the EMSC model, so I did a little small update on it earlier, and then they upgraded it to a 7.5, and then finally got downgraded here to a 7.4. That's a fairly large earthquake nonetheless. The largest aftershock so far, a 6.4. Now, there's some speculation that there may have been a second 7.1 earthquake following the 7.4. I believe that was an error, or maybe potentially one of these 5.7s here that came in roughly about the same time as that supposed 7.1 came in, right? See that 5.7? That at 0609 my time was about the time a secondary 7.1 came in, but it looks as though that may have been an error. And I'll show you guys here on the Yellowstone map here in a little bit. I say Yellowstone because we can see these large earthquakes show up thousands of miles away, the distinct signature of a large earthquake. We'll see if that 7-pointer secondary one was there. But nonetheless, hey, look at this. We got a lot of activity stirring up here, and we'll continue to watch these areas up north. I did pull up the historical data here in this area of this fracture boundary. By the way, just real quick, the Shackleton fracture boundary here is an undersea fracture zone between the Atlantic and the Pacific plate here. See the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean? That obviously shown up here on this map as well. This boundary right here, oceanic crust fracture boundary. Now, it looks as though historically we've had some decent-sized earthquakes out here. Show you guys the largest magnitude. Of course, that one's today. Our last one was back in 1910. So I would say this area is definitely overdue for some larger activity. You know, I can't recall the last time we've seen something of a decent magnitude down here. So seeing this earthquake come in today was a little shock. But 7.1 back in 1910. Let's see, 6.4, that was the one today. That is the aftershock there. 1960, 6.4 down there. That was a 9.5, remember, up along the great, the Peru-Chile Trench there. Hopefully that's not a sign there. We'll have to watch that. But, yeah, I would say it's well overdue here for some larger activity, and we got it. Far as anything major above that, it looks like this fracture boundary may not be capable of producing, like a megaquake. The 7.4 appears to be, at least according to historical records, the largest earthquake out here. The fracture zones normally don't produce a megaquake, but all this activity could be leading up to something in terms of megaquake activity upstream here along the Peru-Chile Trench. With this activity in the mix there of all those earthquakes, now newer activity, it makes sense here that this area is getting quite strained there along the Peru-Chile Trench. So we need to watch that closely for some larger activity. But goodness, that's a good shaker. It did trigger a tsunami statement. Now, whether there was a tsunami or not, let me check that out here real quick. Been on a couple different planes here today trying to get home from Texas. It's just been a long week. Fun, but a long week there. So there's a secondary large aftershock there from the 7.5. Let's see what we got here. Well, the tsunami, obviously the threat from that passed. There was one tsunami wave observation with a maximum tsunami height of, that's a very small number, 0.4 of a foot, 0.14 of a meter. So that's very small. Fortunately, that did not produce any type of major tsunami. But if we have some larger activity upstream here along the Peru-Chile Trench, obviously that can produce big earthquakes and subsequent large tsunamis there that can stretch across the Pacific, like the one that happened there from the 9.5. So we'll continue to watch this here, folks. It's just showing a lot of activity around specifically this area of the Peru-Chile Trench. Now, all this movement here followed a 5.8 over here that started early this morning. Papua New Guinea area. About 40 miles deep there off that plate, onto the plate boundary. Now, whether that triggered things to be set into motion, who knows, but it looks as though that may have been the case. A 5.0 also. This is from last night, that 5.0 northern mid-Atlantic ridge. Far as any effects elsewhere, aside from the South America region following this activity, let's take a look up north here along the North American continent. That includes California, Southern California out here. Let's see if we got anything above 2.5. Really nothing there. Couple earthquakes today, 2.6 up along the Petrolia area and also 3.7 Clear Lake Volcanic Field. That's associated with the hydrothermal operations there across the region that powers a bunch of homes there across the North Bay. But I am not seeing anything of suspicious nature, right, far as any earthquake swarming goes. Just a couple earthquakes out there in the Southern California region, but nothing of noteworthy value for now. But got to remember, when we put things into motion out here, yeah, it's releasing strain that has been built up along this plate boundary for, looks like since 1910, so well over 100 years. But also at the same time, we could be looking at increasing pressure from that resulting earthquake activity, right? And that appears as though, for now, that's along the Peru-Chile Trench southern end here, roughly around Santiago, Chile, southward. But also, shuffling everything around in a jigsaw puzzle can move around other pieces. I just haven't noticed it here across Southern California yet. Up into Northern California, as I noted, this earthquake down south. One earthquake here, very shallow earthquake, 2.2. That's got to be associated with the Cascadia subduction zone strain. Let's check out the tremor. I know we've had a little bit of tremor out there recently. Nothing going on there for now. Let's check out yesterday, and I'll show you guys real quick here. Yeah, a little bit up there in Oregon. I guess we'd have to go back to the previous day to see some of that up there in Northern California and Southern Oregon. But, tremor activity leading to further strain and potentially the next big megaquake out here. No telling when, but I feel that it's going to be during times of heightened tremor. So a little bit of activity there in Northern California and underneath this area from the Cascadia tremor recently. Up into the Seattle area, couple smaller earthquakes, nothing big going on, nothing major across the volcanoes, just periodic small earthquake activity, which is normal. Now let's get to Yellowstone here and see if there was a secondary 7.0 earthquake, right? Why would I use Yellowstone? Well, because it picks up these large earthquakes on a distant station, and you can really see them. that's going to be right here. Looks like potentially it's going to be this reading right here, that 7.4. Now, you can see it also on a couple of the other seismograph stations, 7.4. There was another earthquake here, it looks like. Let me bring this up. Showing up at least on one of them. Maybe on this one as well. See, this is a distant, large signal from a large earthquake, thousands and thousands of miles away. Pretty much the bottom of the planet there. But there was a secondary one. I don't quite think it was a 7-pointer, but according to, and this looks like it's 15, 20 minutes later from the big 7.4. That would match up, right? If we go down here and check this out, that would match up with the 5.7 that struck about 10, 15 minutes later. Now, whether that is a little, smaller than what the actual earthquake came in as, who knows? But it did show up there on Yellowstone. I think a 7.1 would show up, similar to the 7.4 there on the map. So I don't think it was that strong. It wasn't a 6.4 because that happened 6 hours later, and that was at about 11 o'clock in the morning. Hard to say which one it was on here. That should show up here, right? One would think. I'm guessing it's going to be right here. That would match the time frame. So if that's the 6-pointer and this one looks bigger, maybe there was a secondary 7-pointer. That's interesting. We'll have to see if these guys revise their magnitudes here overnight. Sometimes they do that, because that earthquake definitely showing up as a secondary strong signal. You guys see that? I didn't see it on this other one here just a minute ago, but they're definitely showing up. So it's possible we may have seen upper 6, maybe another 7 there earlier. I would have liked to seen the live seismograph stations there on Chile, but unfortunately I was not here. I do have a Chile station right here. That secondary 7-pointer would have showed up nicely on that station, but either way, there was another earthquake. That's, maybe around the 7 range there, just a few minutes later. That would match the time frame. There's the 7.4, just a few short minutes later. Then a few hours later, we have that 6.4, right? Yeah, but that showed up smaller. So, we'll wait. Maybe tomorrow they'll add another one. I don't know. Is the EMSC reporting that secondary 7-pointer? Let's take a look here and see. Oh, got a little earthquake there in Italy, 3.8 right now. So let's scoot down here to the bottom of the EMSC map. Just drives me nuts. I really miss the older one here. Wow. Where did that go? You know what? I'm just going to go here to the list. See if we can find that. Magnitude 5 and above. Here we go. So, yeah, these guys are showing the 7.4, and then a few minutes later, 5.7. So they're sticking with that smaller magnitude. But I think it is possible there may have been a little bit larger quake in there. It's showing up quite nicely there across Yellowstone as a secondary large earthquake thousands of miles away. And I don't think a 5.7 would show up like that. Just my observation now. Kind of changed my mind after seeing a number of these seismograph stations there showing that secondary quake. So we'll just see if they add that on overnight secretly. If that was the case, that would stir up a lot of news there. 2 7-pointers down there. Goodness. Either way, I think we should really watch the Peru-Chile Trench. Texas oil fields. I was just out here, man. A lot of severe weather. I stayed in Elk City last night, Oklahoma. And it was nice when we went to bed. Woke up about 1 o'clock in the morning. I thought there was a tornado going through. We stayed at the upper floor there in the one of the motels there. And there was power flashes all around. Missy Beamies woke me up and said, "Babe, wake up. I think there's a tornado." So I got up, and I was just in panic mode, starting to grab my wallet, my keys, main stuff, just in case the roof blows off. But we've seen quite a few power flashes, and then it was very strong wind. But that's what it was. It was just the strong wind that was triggering these power flashes there, along with heavy rain and some hail in there. But it was crazy. Went to bed nice and calm, wake up at 1 in the morning, and craziness. But it was fun. It was a week of storm monitoring out there. We'll be back out there eventually. But as far as earthquake activity goes there in Texas, oil fields still rocking and rolling. Nothing going on there across Oklahoma. New Madrid seismic zone. One earthquake here, it looks like today, at 2.6. That's the second or third one. Fourth one it looks like here in the last week. These are actually magnitudes above, on average, what we would normally expect. Occasionally we'll see, low grade 2, upper 1s, but these are getting up there in the magnitudes a little bit. So, got to keep an eye on that. 1811, 1812 was the last series of large earthquakes out there. That's been over 200 years. So who knows? Could very well see some larger activity. A couple earthquakes there. One earthquake up in Ohio. They've been getting some earthquake movement up here as well. I believe we'd have to go back the last 30 days. 4 of them. 2 3.1s and a 2.8, 2.3. That's quite rare. Not a whole lot of earthquake activity that takes place up there, but we do have some adjustment going on out here across the region. That includes the New Madrid seismic zone, so keep an eye on that. Let's see the rest of the model here. Let's check out the earthquake 3D globe, see what we have. Aside from that one earthquake up along the Pruchili Trench here, it looks quiet for now, but I'm telling you, watch that closely. New Zealand, a couple 3s down there. Nothing big happening for now. The Java Trench there, a couple 3s and 4s. Japan, some earthquake activity up there, really nothing major. Hawaii over here has been having a little earthquake activity here in the last couple hours. Including a 3.6, 19 miles deep here. Those earthquakes are normally associated with the weight of the Hawaii Islands on the Pacific Plate itself, right? Think about it. It's a hot spot. You got that magma coming up, creating these islands. That does put strain out here on the Pacific Plate. So occasionally we do see these earthquakes of this magnitude, but somewhat deep, about 19 miles deep there. The eruption there is over. Far as the last time I checked, I don't think we got anything new to report on that. Alaska, a couple smaller earthquakes up there. Really nothing big. I'm watching. Whoa, what do we got over here? A shallow earthquake and some deeper activity following that 4.3. That has to be really kicking up some strain here across the Nankai Trough. I've been talking about this a lot, right? This is the area that the Japanese government put a megaquake warning out for last year because of all the earthquake activity around it, all the strain that's being produced here from the general plate motion, and the amount of time that has passed since a megaquake has happened on that Nankai Trough. So these earthquakes here just adding further steam, so to speak, in this area. We'll keep an eye on the Nankai Trough as well. So what do we got here for, I want to check something real quick, show you guys. What do we got for 5 point, just got an earthquake again. Somebody also asked me which earthquake app I use on my mobile device. Well, there's a couple different ones. Normally the ones with the globe on it, you can pull back and you can see the entirety of the globe. That's called QuakeFeed. Very nice app. I do use that a lot. So let's look at the world view right now as far as earthquake activity, right? One would think, man, what's going on with all these earthquakes? A lot of earthquake activity happening, right? So this is the general average amount of earthquakes that we see on any given year out here, anywhere around the planet. I'm just making sure everything's working here. And we should see at least an 8-pointer every year, if not every year, every other year. And our last one was back in 2021. Do the math there, 4 years since we've had an 8-pointer. 15 7.0 to 7.9 earthquakes. Where are we at so far for 2025? Well, let's check it out. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 7-pointers. And here we are in the month of May. Now, if we have another 7-pointer every month until the end of the year, well, that's only 12 7-pointers. So that would put us, as you can see, just below average. But who knows? Really, who knows what's going to happen here for the remainder of the year? But we're just below average. Really, just below average on the number counts out here for a large earthquake, 7.0. And, of course, the largest one so far goes to the Burma region, Myanmar, 7.7 earthquake that struck following all that activity out in the Atlantic Ocean, right? You guys remember a bunch of sixes out there spreading this plate boundary out, adding further strain. Pretty much sets the plates into motion there when you see a lot of activity across the Atlantic, and that's exactly what it did. So where does today's earthquake rank? Number 3 on the largest earthquake, third largest so far for 2025. Space weather activity, one would think, wow, space weather activity must be really ramping up if we have all this large earthquake activity. Well, no, that's not the case. There's been no large flares, no large proton events, no large coronal holes. In fact, it's been pretty quiet. We do have a sunspot facing us, but it's really not doing anything. It's not, if this thing was throwing off X flares and massive protons bombarding the planet, and we hit that 7.4 today, yeah, that's a strong relationship. But I tell you what, that is not the case right now. No relationship between the two whatsoever. It is a massive sunspot, but I tell you what, 4079 here is very quiet. Whether it remains that way or not, let's take a look here at the magnetogram of 4079. This gives us an overview of complexity. I'm seeing it right here. Clear-cut separation trying to form. That's not what you want to see here in a stronger sunspot that can produce some, stronger, decent flares. So we'll continue to watch that. It's been relatively the same, except for a little bit of degrading right there in the center core. And I think that's why we've dropped down here into the B flare category. Boring, right? We're sitting at a B 8.8 right now. That's not good if you want some solar flares. So until that thing changes, I really don't think we have any threats at all for anything strong. These guys showing a 5% chance for X flare. I don't see it. I'm issuing a 1% chance or less for an X flare. M flare, 35 to 45% chance, maybe. I know I got to change mine. It's been set at about 50 for a little bit. I forgot to change it before I left, but that should be around 35 to 45% chance for maybe an M flare. Other than that, the sun out there is just quiet, very quiet right now. Now a little bit of G1 class storming earlier today. Got auroras kicking up here. I don't think that is the cause of the 7.4 today. Okay. Just because last year, this thing, what was it, May? Or was it 2024, 2023? We've seen the auroras down here in Northern California, even all the way down to Mexico, right? It was a KP index up around 8 or 9, G5 class storm, about as strong as you can get. Did we have any massive earthquake activity following that? No. So I don't believe it was associated with that at all. We just happened to get the plates set into motion here because it was time. They are showing a G2 class storm up here. Whether that happens or not, we'll have to see overnight, but that's the aurora forecast here for the next 30 minutes. These guys here show AR4079 as a beta gamma structure, and it's growing. But I've been looking at this here for the past few days since it's been on the visible disk, and if anything, it might be growing in these two areas, but it's getting a clear-cut separation here, and that is not necessarily a good sign there for, magnetically speaking, complexity. So we'll just watch it. It's getting close to directly facing the planet here. Current day 1 outlook: severe weather. When I left this morning there flew out of Oklahoma City, there's some showers and thunderstorms. It looks like this all made it down south here, where we're seeing that slight risk category tonight, with a little bit of tornado threat. Extreme southern Texas, got some wind and a little bit of hail down there. Welcome back to the California air. Actually, it was not too bad here. It's still actually quite green. In fact, when I was gone here for the week, I picked up half an inch of rain, so I got to get out there and mow the grass tomorrow. It's way tall. But a little bit of hail threat there tonight. See what we got here for the storm reports today. 5-2. Is this going to work? There we go. Hello? What's going on there? Am I still live? I'm still live. Surprised the stream's held on for so long there. Haven't had any issues with it in the last couple weeks. That's good. Maybe maybe whoever was messing with it just gave me a break there. I don't know what's going on with this, but it's not working here. As far as the storm reports go, I really don't know what's going on. A little odd. So, anyway, what do we got coming in now? A little earthquake there in Chile right now. Like I said, just keep an eye there on the Peru-Chile Trench. Things tend to, this is a general plate movement here, right? You got the Scotia Plate. The fracture boundary sits right about here. The general plate movement shows a northward and northeastward movement here that would strain this area right about here, one would think. And, it definitely is showing some signs of strain, but also back over here against the Scotia Plate, the northern end. So we'll watch that overnight, see what happens. I don't think we're going to see anything larger in terms of a megaquake here. Now, whether that plays, further upstream here, that's a good possibility along the Peru-Chile Trench. We'll watch that and, of course, report back on anything that changes. I am going to take a hot shower and relax a little bit. It's been a long week. I don't think I slept maybe a couple hours each night. I don't know. I'm just one of those people that can't sleep when I'm away. I have to be in my own bed. I have to have my fan. I'm sure everyone out there knows exactly what I'm talking about. There's no place like home, and there's no bed like your own. I can sleep. I hope I sleep really good tonight. Anyway, have a good one. We will see you guys back out here for the Saturday morning update unless something major happens here. So I'm not going to bed yet. Got a lot of stuff I got to do here, but I will be monitoring the activity. One earthquake right now in Texas, 3.4 outside of Mentone. That is the oil fields out there. A lot of oil fields out there northwest of Pecos, Texas. Have a good one.